is to give you, hopefully, a world of hope. I want to share a little bit about Ron Gibson. I grew up on a ranch out in the Applegate in southern Oregon. My father raised cattle, we raised hay. I was very close to the log trucks that went up and down. My dad worked in the mills, so I'm very familiar with the country way of life. When I went to engineering school, I'm a former Marine. I spent 13 months in Vietnam, last 9 months in the Marine Corps. I had the great honor of being a body escort, and I took Vietnam casualties home to their families. Toughest job that I've ever had in my life. But what an honor, what an honor. And I'm proud to have served my country. I was not drafted, I volunteered. And I come from a family of dedicated constitutionalists. I mean, if it wasn't profitable, plow it under. And if there was success, it needs to be rewarded. And I want to encourage all of you here today. My background is I'm an engineer by training. I probably do more law issues, but my secondary studies was constitutional law. And I took to that like a duck to water. My mother and dad, like I said, were very avid constitutionalists, and it has served me well in my 46 years of being in law. I teach 4 law classes a month, of which Jerry here attends one of my law classes. I teach patent law, I teach mining law, I teach constitutional law, etc. And there's an old saying, folks, and I believe it to be true: 3 types of people in the world. And that is those who make things happen, and those who watch things happen, and the third one is those who look around one day and wonder what happened. And we kind of chuckle at that, but I want to challenge it. Which one are you? Which one are you? Are you willing to stand up when everybody else is saying, no, you can't do it? I've made a success of my businesses based upon the fact that I don't know defeat. I remember a commanding general that Obama relieved his command because the general did not totally agree in any sense of the way that President Obama was handling the military in Afghanistan and elsewhere. And Obama said to him as he was walking out the door, he said, "Aren't you sorry that you didn't capitulate? And why didn't you surrender?" And the general said, "Sir, you may be commander-in-chief, but I don't even know how to spell the word surrender, let alone to surrender." And I fought under that flag right there. And it's precious to me. My country I love. And we're here tonight because I think it's evident to everyone here that there's something dreadfully wrong. And I hear all the time, I hear people say, well, gee whiz, our children are our future. I totally disagree with that from this context. If we don't take a stand today, our children have no future. And we better come to grips with that very issue. This has nothing to do with Democrat, it has nothing to do with Republican, it has nothing to do with any of that. Folks, we are under attack. Under attack with your rights, you're under attack with your finances, your land is under attack, etc. And land law is something of one of my specialties. I wrote a book. It's called What You Need to Know About Land Patents. And I'm not here to promote my book, do you? I'm just simply trying to share with you that you're folks of land, you ranchers and farmers and timber people here, boy, you better take note, because they're coming after it, and they're coming after it all, every bit of it. And there's an old saying, united we stand and divided we fall. Where do you stand? Which one of the three are you? I have people all the time come up to me, Ron, what can I do? I'm only one. And my immediate answer is this, folks, but you are one, and you're one, and you're one, and you're one, and so on. And when those oneness come together, it's a mighty power. It's mighty. I'm an avid student of my Bible. I love the Lord. I love Scripture. There's a scripture in Revelations that says that any man who puts his hand upon the plow and turns back is unfit for the kingdom of heaven. A lot of this stuff we're involved in is because we got lazy, folks. Not all of you, but a lot. Oh, our government will take care of us. There has never been such a horrific abuse to the American people than this corporate administrative government that we've allowed to get dominant over our life. And I'm here to tell you there's hope, and I too, like Gary said a little while ago, I am 100% in favor of a lawful government. But I am adamantly opposed to an ungodly government. And what we have now is a self-serving government looks at you and I as their personal slave. And they're going to keep you in bondage as long as you choose to be in bondage. And you say, well, what can I do? The government's passed this law and passed that law. Let me share something with you. I'm an avid student of case law and law itself. There's a very famous case called the City of Dallas versus Mitchell case. And in that case, the judge stated very clearly, and many of the federal courts refer to this case when they want to illustrate this point. And what the federal judge said, that you are not subject to administrative jurisdiction unless you volunteer to be subject to that jurisdiction. That's why Gary was mentioning the fact of the sovereign. You know what makes you a sovereign? Have you ever thought about this? And I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot. It means that you're created by God and you have inalienable rights. Those inalienable rights have no authority for any man-created government to come and to take those from you, to diminish those rights for you, or anything else. God said, if you trust in me, I will be your defender. I study my Bible intently, folks. And I read what happens on the day of judgment. It makes my skin crawl. I don't want to be in that position. I really don't. And I'm not ashamed of my faith. But this issue, you have so much power here individually. That's why, as Gary said, we the people. I don't know if you know the little short story I want to share with you, if I might. And that is the fact that when the Constitution was drafted and it went to the Commonwealth of Delaware, those three words were not a part of the constitutional writing. When they looked at it and they discussed it before signing it, they said, wait a minute, there's something way wrong here. Who's the authority here? And they wrote in, we the people. By doing so, folks, made you and I and every American kings of our land. I deal in land patent. I do land patent seminars. I help people bring their land patent forward. Every one of you that own land can bring your land patent forward and get out from underneath the bullshit. Excuse my French. All of this property tax and everything was never intended by our founding fathers for you to be taxed upon your allodial land. I have Supreme Court case galore on it. I have been asked to testify in court cases having to do with my law background. I've been in law 46 years. I have yet to have anybody to show me in writing, in law, of the fact that where you can take a mortgage and convert that to a title and come and take your land. Doesn't exist in law, folks. I'll tell you right now. In my book, under the memorandum of law, about 2/3 of the way through it, I address that, what the lawful procedure is, and the courts are mandated to do it. But there's an old saying, and I want to share this with you if I may. The courts have said over and over and over, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any rights. We know something's wrong, don't we? Then let's identify with it and stand up. The Bible says expose sin right where it's at. It's amazing the power that we are indwelled with by our Lord if we'll take a stand for righteousness. That includes your land. You know, there's 13 references in Scripture about the fact that I will give my people the land and they shall dwell in the land and own the land forever. 13 different times. I think he put a pretty heavy emphasis on that. They're called allodial titles. There's 180 years of court cases in that. You need to stand up and protect your land. And there's an element that I want to share with you if I may. And that is the fact that when the uninformed have now been informed, they choose to be informed or they choose to be dishonest. Now let me share something with you if I may. Here's what's interesting about that. At the moment that the truth is revealed, it is no longer a factual issue. It becomes a moral issue. Are you going to take hold of the truth and are you going to step forward, or are you going to deny it and say, oh, I don't want to do that, and it might be a little inconvenient for me? Because the very statement says it all. Are you honest? Question, are you honest? You got to be honest right here first, or you can be honest with anything else. And what I'm trying to share with you folks here tonight is the fact that if you're willing, if you choose to stand up, there is a constitutional provision and a constitutional protection for you to claim your county back as a constitutional republic county. The question is, are you going to band together? People tell me all the time, what can I do? I'm only one. But you are one. And I want to remind you of that again. And there's mighty power in you as an individual. I don't know about you. I'm sick to death of the criminality. I'm the chairman, and this is one of our faithful liaison officers, communications guy for Jefferson Mining District. It's the largest mining district in the United States. In 2013, we sued the state of Oregon as a mining district for the criminality that they did under, what is it, House Bill 830? Or Senate Bill? Yeah. Senate Bill, thank you. Senate Bill 838. Which the state just arbitrarily decides we're going to outlaw mining in all the streams of motorized mining in the streams of Oregon. Now you may not like mining, and that's fine. But let me share something, a thought that I'm asking you to consider. Does anyone in here wear a watch or check a watch? You don't ever look at a watch? You don't ever look at a watch?
Daylight till dark.
Okay. Does anyone have a cell phone?
Yeah.
Hello. Hello. The point I'm making is that we depend upon mining products every day of our life. There's a film that was put out about 30 years ago, which was a promotional mining film. Very interesting. And it came down to asking the ultimate question. What would your life be like without mining? and the camera zooms in on a woman in her home. That's her domain, isn't it? Boy, her home, I'm telling you, she's the boss, and rightfully so. But it said, what would happen if it were not for money? And the clock disappears off the wall. The camera moves to the coffee pot. The coffee pot is gone. The toaster is gone. The dishes are gone. The sink is gone. The faucets are gone. The stove, refrigerator, the countertops, and you get the message.
The husband better leave too.
Yeah. And if they would have taken it to the full degree, the woman would have been standing there with literally no clothes on. There's no house, no foundation, no nothing. It takes a saw to cut the tree down to make paper or plywood or lumber or whatever. You hurt a miner, you hurt everybody. Because we all need and depend upon the products and the services that they provide. You hurt a farmer, you hurt everybody. We all eat, don't we? We are losing over 1,200 acres a single day, 365 days a year for the last 47 years. Okay? Get your calculator out and push a few numbers with that. You hurt a farmer, you hurt everybody. We're going to wake up one day in this country, even to those who are radically opposed to you and what you stand for, they eat too.
They forget that.
And it often amazes me of people who are on that side of the fence. And it doesn't matter that we have to agree on everything all the time. I'm not saying that at all. But we better figure out pretty quick what is the elements of priority in our life and our community, or we're going to lose it even further than we have. Okay? You hurt a timberman, you hurt everybody. How much stuff's made out of wood? This whole building made out of wood, mining products and whatever. You hurt a manufacturer, you hurt everybody. Those producers are protected by law. Are they being protected? No, they're not.
Abused by the law.
They're not being protected. And I want to just give you an illustration. Just look at a triangle for the sake of this discussion. And in that triangle, the top half an inch, if you were to color it, would represent the producers. Producers have tremendous capacity to supply all for commerce and for the consumer. They were to be protected so that those products and services would continue on as the population grew and the culture changed a little bit there. We always have some kind of a change. But when the administrative process came in 1954 in the state of Oregon, it virtually took that triangle and turned it upside down so that the whole mass of regulation and the pressure is on the producer. Are you with me? What's that do? It starts crushing it. I've had people laugh in my face, and I love it, they said. We don't need any of you. I said, you know, you can say that, but one day, if this continues, you will wake up and you will be a victim of it the same as everybody else. So you can laugh and haunt and be haunty about that attitude. That's fine until you have no food and the store shelves are bare and there's no manufacturing and there's no farmers and there's no timbermen, there's no cattlemen, and there's no mining. If you folks, what I'm trying to share with you, if you'll band together, you have every lawful right to bring your county back in to a constitutional republic county. The federal Constitution guarantees that. The Oregon State Constitution guarantees that. I've had arguments with judges and attorneys and whatever, and I said, show me where there's not a lawful right to do that. Not one in 46 years has ever been able to present me with a counter to the problem of that guarantee in our Constitution. Now I want to say something about our Constitution. You can hold it up, it comes in books, little booklets or whatever. It is not a self-executing document. And what I mean by that is that unless you stand up and defend it, then in essence it's nothing but a piece of paper. You with me? God said, I will honor you if you will stand up for righteousness. And I think we will be held accountable for that very thing. You people have been hit massively here in a number of areas. This fire was devastating. But the jobs are being taken away, restriction on agriculture, whatever. Under a constitutional republic, you can raise as much and whatever you want to raise, and there's no authority to infringe upon that because it's constitutionally protected. It's called a allodial title. Allodial title means king of your land, owing to no one. If you look it up, you folks can do it. And I want to encourage you to give it some consideration, serious consideration. Because if you'll stand up, God said, I'll honor you. Because laws are meant to bring peace. Regulations are to create conflict. Did you know that? Law is to bring peace, but regulations and codes are to bring conflict. Wow, what a diabolically opposite those two positions are. So there's much more I could say, but I don't want to take you people's time up. Jerry, did you have something you want to present?
Oh, I was just going to say, I don't even live in this county, but yay, let's do it.
A provocateur.
No, I actually was a realtor, and when I first started attending the classes, it didn't, and I fancy myself as someone who is, you know, aware of what's going on. I was aware of the housing debacle and how the banksters had shysted everybody. I was aware of a lot of things, and it wasn't until I started taking the class and Ron, we started going over the warranty deeds, and then he was talking about the title. How do you, when you go to the title company and you buy your land, what do you're either tenants in common or tenants in the entirety, or what's the other one? Anyway, there's different, you know, ways you can take it. But what's the key word there?
Tenant.
Tenant. You're a tenant. It didn't even occur to me.
Can't get a patent to the title company.
Exactly. I mean, and there were lots of things like, a lot of aha moments like that, where I thought, this was right in my face. I went to title companies all the time. I had, you know, how do you want to take title? You don't have title. You're a tenant. I mean, it was really, and I'm no longer a realtor, by the way.
Good for you.
Yeah, I'm a reformed realtor.
It's like a lawyer. A reformed
I'm
realtor.
still in my 12-step program. But
The daily struggle.
But just the stuff that we've learned in the classes just would really blow your mind when you actually understand your rights. And at first it was like, it's like, because you don't realize how much you've been indoctrinated. You will not realize how much you've been indoctrinated. And I keep going to the classes and I'm like, oh my God. It's like being in a cult, and then, you know, being, you know, where they have to rehabilitate people after they've been in cults. It's that bad. We are psychologically bombarded every day, and we just accept it because we don't know what else to do. And this has been so enlightening and so freeing. And we're in Jackson County, and we're you know, starting this. It's harder to do there because it's a bigger county, but which means it's a bigger task. But nonetheless, we are taking steps, you know, towards this.
Awesome.
And that's another thing too, I think that's really important, is that the more the counties do this, the more they work together, the more they start, you know, understanding what, you know, what's working, what's not working. Hey, you know, you're doing this, oh, that worked, okay, let's try that. You know, the more that we have that communication, I think the better off we're gonna be. Because the tyranny that we all live under right now, the Multnomah tyranny that we all live under right now is deplorable. And we're supposedly a home rule charter in our county. But if you look at all of the home rule charters, and there's 8 or 9 of them in the state, and every one of them in the legal status, and like even Josephine County, they have some really groovy things in there. They've got, you can't, no forced vaccinations, you can't just rip kids away from families, they have good gun Second Amendment rights and everything. It sounds really good, but you have to read the legal status. And the legal status of the county is that they are an agency of the state, a body politic, and a corporation, in that order. And, in law, the order of those things make a difference. Now, if you read Multnomah counties, they are a body politic, a agency of the state, and a corporation. So they have reversed those two things. They're a body politic first. So I don't know if that, how much that plays a role. I mean, at the end of the day, you're incorporated. So at the end of the day, that's probably the most important word. But the point is that your legal status decides your fate. So you can put all the groovy stuff in there that you want. It doesn't mean anything because you're an agency of the state first and foremost. And we have learned that the hard way. We go to town hall meetings and we talk to the county commissioners and we're like, damn you, what are you doing? We're mad as hell. We're not going to take this anymore. And they're like, well, what can we do? We're the agency of the state. We're boots on the ground for the state. And of course, our response is, well, what do we need you for then? We'll just take directives straight from the President of the United States. What do we need? What are we paying you $100,000 for? But that's really what it boils down to, is that you've got to regain your legal status. Or actually not your legal status, your lawful status.
So how do you remove that agency of the state from your county?
Unincorporate.
Unincorporate.
The people of the county have the authority. They can do it 2 ways. Number 1 is to petition their county commissioners, of which to dissolve the county corporate charter. You have to get rid of the snake that's biting you. Then you implement your common law, and you do that right from your governing body. If the county will not do it, then you, the people, have the power to it. People create governments. Governments do not create people. And when government fails, then it falls back in the people's hands to do what needs to be done. I want to address one of the, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I just asked the question and you answered it.
Pardon?
I was just asking that question.
Yeah. And
Well, I think
good
that
question.
planning is really important, because I think you have to be prepared for any eventuality and to prepare for unintended consequences, and that's really important. So education is a huge piece, and having a, you can always zig and zag a little bit, but you probably should have a really good concrete plan before you try to.
If I can inject something here,
Sure.
you won't be alone. When other counties see what you are doing, they'll do it too.
Except for Harney County. That's where I'm from.
I believe Harney County will,
That's only after,
eventually.
that's only after we burn the courthouse down.
Say a few words at some point.
Pardon?
Can I say a few words at some point?
Please, go
I
ahead.
don't want to interrupt you.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
I don't like to talk to, my back doesn't talk, my front does. So I don't want to talk to you facing away from you.
It doesn't look much better than the other side.
We drove up here because Dwayne's blind. I don't know.
Don't own a map.
My name's Chris Briels. If you guys can count, I got 2 arms and 2 legs. I suppose some of you have probably heard about me. I got bowed up and I quit Harney County because of the corruption. I've been told from people all over the United States. I didn't realize what was going to happen when I did that. I'm just an old fart that don't like to get pushed around. I just believe in the difference between right and wrong. It's pretty easy to figure out what's right and what's wrong. If you speak out against wrong, suddenly you're a hero. That's wrong. That should not be that way. When I spoke out against Steve Grasty, and cameras caught it, and then the next day I spoke out after I had exposed the FBI in Harney County, and cameras saw it, people started calling me, messaging me on Facebook, telling me that I'm a hero. I'm not a hero. I'm just somebody that spoke up the way every person in this United States should speak up. What is wrong with this system? When some old fart like me stands up and says it the way he feels, that shouldn't make you a hero. You should be just like everybody else. That was really, really sad to me to think about that. It's like, my God, I never asked to be part of the Committee of Safety in Harney County. I went to a meeting to figure out what the hell's going on. We had some excellent education about the Constitution and some historical facts. No malarkey, no BS. They talked about committees of safety. They said, hey, do you think we should have one? They said, yeah. So there was a vote. Yeah, we should have a committee of safety. Okay, fine. Now there's 60, 70 people sitting in this room. We have a committee of safety. How about that? And I'm sitting back and I'm watching. And then they opened it for nominations. The first guy got nominated and I thought, wow, you poor sucker. Oh my God. I was the second one. Watch out what your karma will do for you. I was a Harney County Fire Chief and I ran the Burns Fire Department and the ambulance for 24 years, and I was a Harney County Chief for a lot longer than that. Because I liked to serve the people, to help people. I grew up in a rural area in Colorado where you help people. You know, you're driving down the road and somebody's off the side of the road, you stop and help. I don't care if he's 22 feet tall. You ask him, do you need some help? Maybe he needs you to go get a part for him. Who knows? But why not help your fellow man? If you see someone struggling, why can't you help them? And that's all I've ever been doing. It's just what I felt was the right thing to do. Well, I spoke out against Grasty and I wound up being famous. Didn't want to be famous. See how I dress? This is how famous people are. You know, I put my pants on the same way as most of you people do, probably in a lot different than a lot of you, because I've had 4 fusions in my back and my feet are a long ways away. So sometimes I know where I'm supposed to put my pants, but I can't get them there. I'm not special. But I just been sitting here. I came up here to see what was going on here. Why? Is it because there's a line in the dirt somewhere and I'm not allowed to go somewhere else? No. Because there's more people everywhere you go. And it's not just a Grant County problem. It's not a Harney County problem. It's not a Josephine County. It's all over. It's all over. And you made a comment, you know, well, what can I do? You know, a lot of people down through the years I've heard people say, yeah, well, yeah, that's what the government does, but what can I do? Look what happened to me. I wasn't even trying to do nothing. I've done over 24 radio shows now, and I'll tell you something. Last year, about 8 months ago, I thought, Chris Briels, can I see a show of hands of anybody that's ever heard of a Briels before me? You can get a grant to study us, probably, because we're an endangered species.
In more ways than one.
Yeah. And I'm probably a little more endangered than I used to was. But I don't care. But what I did is I typed in on the search engine on Facebook, I typed my name, Chris Briels. Same spelling. It came back with a picture of Harley Davidson on there. My Facebook picture shows me I was in a play in The Odd Couple, and somebody took a stupid looking picture, and that picture, I was playing Oscar Madison in The Odd Couple, and that's my Facebook picture. I don't got a Harley. I'm not smart enough to ride a street bike. Dirt bikes, it's all the way, all the time, and I can't control myself on a street bike, so I'm not gonna have a street bike. I go fast, and I'm not smart enough to not. Anyway, I asked for this person to be my friend, and he said, sure. Then I see him on the chat list one day. Where do you live? Holland. He lives in Holland. And I chat back and forth with him. He speaks Dutch, and he's obviously got some kind of a translator, so he types some English, sort of. You know, I was asking him, what kind of problems do you have? And they had all the refugees in Holland that came in. You know, there's problems everywhere. Amen. Not just here, all over. But I thought, wow, that is really weird. But then, here about 2 months ago, he had a little birthday cake next to his name, and he was on the chat list. So it was his birthday. This guy I've never met. It has my same name. The spelling the exact same thing. And I said, happy birthday to the other you from the other me, or whoever we are. And he said, thank you. And I said, how old are you? He says, 55. And I said, well, happy birthday. And I said, have you been harassed by anyone mistaking you for me? Because I've caught an incredible amount of flack just because I stood up and said what I felt. I stood up and said what I felt because I wasn't afraid to speak. And that's abnormal, I guess. Amen. But he said, what is harassed? He couldn't find his book or something. I said, have people called you names or threatened you or said bad things to you? He said, no, but I heard you. And I said, what? And I'll never forget it. You wash on the radio, W-A-S-H. You wash on the radio. And I heard you. You know, when you say, what can one person do? And I'm a nobody. And here's some guy in Holland with the same spelling of my name that I've never even met. And he heard me talk. He heard me talk on a radio show because I'm somebody's hero, and they want to hear what I have to say, because I guess they want to hear what a person says that's not afraid to say what they're going to say. Amen. Well, nobody should be afraid to say what you want to say. You know, you should know the difference between right and wrong, and whether you should say something or you shouldn't say something. You know, I shouldn't come up and insult people. I shouldn't say bad things about people. I should be an honest person. Look you in the eye and shake your hand. That's the way it is. That's the way it works. But just me getting bowed up, getting pissed off, and speaking out against Steve Grasty, which I will tell you, I'm not done. I grew up in Colorado, and I've been to the zoo one time and I seen an ostrich, but we didn't have them anywhere else in the county. Anywhere else in that state. Never learned to put my head in the sand. Not one of my traits. I'm not done. But when he says, what can you do? You can stand up for your rights. You can study that Constitution, and you can speak your mind. And you should not have to be afraid. You should not. The last time the FBI followed me, I was going to help Ammon Bundy's wife get his four-wheeler from the Narrows. I had a trailer. I drove down there. She had been told she couldn't get her stuff that day, so she came back to Burns. I don't know if you guys know where the Narrows is, at Highway 205 down there. I was at the Narrows store. I looked down 205 one way and the other way, and there was nobody. I looked towards the refuge. Nobody. Nothing towards Eagle's Nest. I turned. By the time I got to the bridge at the Narrows, which is about a mile,
You had company.
I had a black SUV with 2 antennas and a white government plate come up behind me, and I braced for a collision. Because they were coming up so fast, I knew they were going to ram me. I've got a trailer that I built. I started out with a set of spindles, and I just kept going, and I wound up with a trailer. And it's got an expanded metal aluminum tailgate, bifold tailgate that I can see through. They got up so close on my butt that I couldn't even see the headlights. I knew they were going to run into me, but they didn't. And they backed off, and they got back a ways, and then they came up, and they did that over and over and over. And I'd been going about 60 miles an hour, and I slowed down, and I thought, well, why don't you guys just pass me? I don't really want to play games today, you know. They kept it up. There were 2 vehicles that passed both of us. And I thought, well, if you guys want to have fun, I want to make sure you enjoy yourself a little longer. So I slowed down. After a while, I hit the cruise control, and we came all the way to Burns, Oregon, at 42 miles an hour. And they would do that. They would come up and damn near run into me, and then they'd back up, and run up and back up, and run up and back up. What the hell for? You know, they've been doing that to people all over Harney County.
Yeah, intimidation.
I turned my left turn signal on when I got close to Burns, and I pulled off, and they went around me, and then I backed up, and I got behind them, and I followed them into Burns, and they wound up in a turn signal lane on the right-hand turn signal there at Egan and Monroe, and I wound up in the lane to the left of them. And it's a blacked out window, and I could see this baseball cap turn and look at me, and I went, we don't have to be afraid of them sons of bitches. We do not, and you don't have to be afraid to speak. You just don't, you know, and thanks for listening to me.
You betcha.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. You know, I want to respond, if I might, to a point you made. You said that you weren't a hero. And I think that for the most part, we would agree with that. But what maybe you may not see or understand, and I say that respectfully, what you did was an heroic deed.
Yeah.
That's why you got the response that you got. There are people all across this land who wish they had the guts that you have. There are people who admire other people. They won't do it themselves, but they admire someone who will stand up and speak. And I'm telling you, thank God for people like you.
Well, then we need to educate our children to learn how to be adults, how to be responsible adults. We need morals and ethics back in our schools. We need to have people learn how to be people.
This woman right here ran a private school by herself, brought it up from the ground up, and the students that came out of her school on the thing were educated properly, with the right things, for the right reasons, whatever. See, you can do that in your county if you get rid of this chokehold here, this bondage thing called a corporation. Because as long as it's in place, they're going to choke you to death. Now, I want to say one other thing, and then I'll be quiet here. I want to encourage you and caution you at the same time. I've heard today many times, well, this is BLM land, or that's Forest Service land. And I'm going to ask you to stop identifying the public lands as Forest Service land or BLM land. They have no title. How many of you heard of Wayne Haig in Nevada? Most of you property owners have heard of him. They won that case on the basis that the government could not provide title. I helped the miner in Southern Oregon when they came after him criminally for cleaning up an old mining claim. He cleaned out 5 3/4-ton pickup load with 4-foot plywood, and he hauled it to the dump at his expense. And just to harass him because they didn't want him filing on the mineral claim, they're trying to get everybody out of the forest. They came after him criminally. And we go to court, and he asked that he said that he would take on the public defender if in fact that she would use me as a consultant having to do with mining. So that's what we did. And we go to court, and in the courtroom there, the prosecutor calls 4 government witnesses. Every one of them got up there and said their usual bullshit and all of that, and then pretty soon the prosecutor asked, whose land it is this? And every one of them, all 4 of them said, this is BLM land. And I'm going, object. She didn't hear me, and I got to be careful, or the judge escorted me out of the courtroom. So anyway, I wrote a note. I had a sticky pad in my pocket, my pen, and I wrote a note. I said, call for a recess ASAP. And when the judge turned and looked at the computer on the thing, I said, Dusty, I was sitting right behind him. I handed him, pointed to his attorney. I said, give that to her. So he gave it to her, and she looked at it. She looked at Dusty, and she set it down. About 10 minutes later, she asked the judge if they could have a 10 or 15-minute recess, and he agreed. So we get outside, and we went over in the corner, and her name was Greta, a young gal, sharp as a tack. And she said, Ron, what's this about? And I said, Greta, I said, you blew it. She said, well, what do you mean? I said, you let all 4 of the government witnesses get on the record that the land is owned by the Bureau of Land Management, and you didn't object. And I said, you're going to have to call those witnesses back and correct that. Oh, she goes, Ron, you're right, I forgot all about that. Because I told her that the title issue. So about 20 minutes later, after in the court, she asked the judge, she said, Your Honor, I want to recall the government's witnesses. So she calls the first witness back up. She said, I want to remind you that you're still under oath. And he agreed. She said, you testified earlier that this was BLM land. Is that not correct? And the witness said, yes. She said, well, would you please show me the title? And this guy is looking at her like a deer in the headlights. He said, I beg your pardon? He said, I want you to show me the title. She said, you do have a title, don't you? Well, he said, no. She said, well, what do you mean, no? You testified that this was BLM land. She said, is the title back at your office? And he, well, no. He said, well, is it in the district office? There where you work? Well, I don't know. She said, well, is it in Portland? Well, I don't know. She said, well, is it in Denver? Well, I don't know. She said, wait a minute. I thought you said that you testified under oath that you have first-hand knowledge that this is BLM land. She said, I want you to prove that in fact your testimony is correct and that to show us the title. She said, have you ever seen the title? And he said, well, no. And she turned to the judge and said, Your Honor, I move that his testimony be totally stricken from the record because he's perjured himself in this court. And the judge said, stricken from the record. She then calls the second witness. Same thing. Absolutely flayed his testimony. Good attorneys can do that. She did all 3 of them. There are 4 of them. She said, Your Honor, I move that all of the witnesses testimony be stricken from the record. Said stricken from the record. Then she calls the defendant, my friend, Dusty Ford. And she said, Mr. Ford, do you feel you have a right to the mineral that you filed a claim on? And he said, yes, I do. She said, would you please tell the court how that is? And he said, well, under the 1872 mining law, I have a right to go on the public land and search for minerals, and if I find minerals, I then file a claim upon that. I then have to take it to the county and get it notarized, and then within 60 days later, I have to send it to the BLM for issue of an ORMC number. She said, well, Mr. Ford, do you have what you consider a title? And he said, yes, ma'am. She said, you do? And he said, yeah. So he said, may I see it? So he opened up his lapel and he pulled a two-folded 8.5 by 11. He held it up. She said, would you tell the court what this is? He said, it's my claim filing. And he said, well, explain to the court what this means. He said, this is my title. Under mining law, this is my title. Wilbur versus United States case says that any duly filed mineral claim acts as a patent. It becomes private property. At that very moment, one of the jurors says, may we see that? Highly unusual, highly unusual. So the defense attorney asked the judge and said, very well. So she walked over and she handed it to the juror that asked for that. All the jurors was trying to look at this document. They looked at it and she got it back and she said, Mr. Ford, would you please explain to the court what these stamps are? He said, the one at the top left is a county. I'm required by law to file it in the county. He said, the one at the top right is I sent it to Portland and they issued an ORMC number. He said, what does ORMC stand for? Oregon Recorded Mining Claim. And he said, that validates my discovery. They're saying, yes, this is my title, and I'm entitled to it. And they have arrested me and charged me criminally for hauling junk off that if I'd have dumped it there, I'd have gone to jail. So which is it? In that moment, the attorney looked at the judge and said, Your Honor, I move that all the charges be stricken from their drop and all of this stricken from the record. The judge turned and looked at the prosecutor, which was a lady they brought down, a high-powered an attorney for the federal government who wins cases, and he said, well, counselor, the judge was kind of, what are you going to say about this? And that's what he was saying. She said, well, Your Honor, we still feel that he's guilty of a crime. And the judge leaned over and he said, counselor, you can do better than that. She said, well, Your Honor, then we have no objection. Case dismissed. And the point that I'm making here, every land law ever made by Congress is done under what's called a public land law. There is no BLM ownership of the public lands. There is no Forest Service ownership of the public lands. There is no EPA ownership of the public lands. There is no Army Corps of Engineers ownership of the public land. It belongs to all of you. All of you. So I just want to encourage you, do not call it BLM land. Do not call it government land. The Constitution, in fact, forbids the government from owning land except for military bases, ammunition dumps, and ports, and post offices, and other needful buildings. Are you with me? Yeah. Thank you all very much.
Okay, I'd like to thank all of you for inviting us. It's our pleasure because we're here to serve you. That's what we're about. It's not about us. It's about you guys. It's about your home, your family, and your county. I have some books that I brought. They're $20 a piece. I don't make any money off of them. If you'd like to learn more about common law grand juries, these are awesome books about it. They're my #1 Bible as well when I first started. Mine is all tagged up and writing and stuff because it is one of the best annotated books I have ever seen. It gives you every listing of where to look if you want to learn more. And then I also have some American bulletins. They're free. If you like them, you can, there's a little thing to send in. Write Darby on it, and you can get a $5 discount. I was able to arrange that for you. Robert Kelly, he's out of Central Point. He's an Oregonian. And once again, thank you very much, everybody.